Hey everyone, welcome to the Brand Innovators livecast series. My name is E.B. Moss and I'm SVP of Content and Community here at Brand Innovators. And I want to welcome you to the Consumer Engagement CPG livecast. Now, today is really special, and I'm thrilled to kick off the first half of this event, and then I'll toss it to my coworker, Carrie, to bring home the rest. But we have a really terrific agenda with an awesome lineup of marketers. Now, before we get started, just a reminder that if you'll be in New York during Advertising Week, our big Marketing Innovation and Leadership Summit is taking place at that time. We'll also be honoring the top 100 women in marketing and the most innovative women in marketing. If you'd like to nominate an innovative woman, yes, there is a category for CPG, by the way, submit please by tomorrow, August 12th. I'll put a link in the chat to that nomination form. But for now, I want to thank all of the marketers and sponsors and even you, the audience, for making this event possible. Just a reminder, we love engagement here at Brand Innovators. So throughout the event, you'll be able to chat using the little widget at the bottom of your screen and ask questions through the Q&A widget. We really encourage you to engage with our speakers and attendees because that's what community is all about. So without further ado, please welcome the fabulous Vivian Chang, who is head of D2C practice at the Clorox company. And I will say she's working on a really interesting brand, which I think we'll all want sent D2C direct to us. And her moderator, James Solwasser. He is brand partnerships at Outfront Media. And I'm very happy to see you with cameras on and microphones on, and you guys are good to go. Yay. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a good show.
All right. Thanks, EB. Vivian, welcome. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. I never know if I do this right. Is the consumer engagement flipped for you on the screen, or am I mirrored?
You look fine.
All right, cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us this morning, and thank you, Brand Innovators, for having us. And have a great conversation about consumer engagement as it relates to Clorox and the D2C side of the business within the brands. I'll just give a quick intro to myself. James Solwasser. I head up brand partnerships in San Francisco for Outfront Media. We are a group of multimedia experts and consultants within Outfront Media, and we work with our many brands from large to small to get the most out of the out-of-home medium, as there's so much innovation going on in the space. And one of the great things that we're doing to push consumer engagement is bringing a lot of digital products to the market, and then what we can do with those products. So I just got some stats back from our MTA partnership. That 41% of consumers on the MTA are now using QR codes. And that's obviously something that is driving consumer engagement when you think of out of home. Obviously, we are a big, bold, spectacular medium, but we can drive those consumer engagements now with some of our digital street level assets. So Vivian, would love to get a little bit of background on what you do for Clorox and some of the brands that you're working on within the D2C space.
Sure, yeah. First of all, happy to be here. Thanks to James moderating and Brand Innovators. So Clorox, most people I'd say don't know, I didn't before I joined the company, is actually a CPG collection of brands, much like a P&G, a Unilever, and so forth. And so what my role is to run direct to consumer, a little bit like a core capability, almost like a center of excellence, as it's called in other places, that cuts across brands. And so any of the brands within the portfolio where it does make sense to stand up D2C, we come in, we're involved in all kind of that full life cycle. And so the brands that currently have direct to consumer, there's 6 supplements and vitamins brands. RenewLife.com is probably the most prominent of that. Burt's Bees as well, Brita water filters, and actually very recently, we did launch direct-to-consumer for the actual Clorox.com cleaning brand itself. And so continue to grow the footprint of brands that have that capability enabled.
Cool. Love that. Still waiting on the Hidden Valley Ranch direct to consumer, but I'm sure there's things in the work with that as well. So what does direct to consumer look like at Clorox? And how has that shifted in there? You've been there for a couple of years now. The acquisition is a few years old now. Like how are things going? What is the sort of day-to-day and how does that, how do you navigate within, a large parent company such as Clorox?
Sure. Yeah. I'd say we've certainly had a transition. So when we first formed and I joined to help to grow direct to consumer as a capability within Clorox, myself and most of my senior level peers, we all came from direct to consumer startups out in the space. And so it originally was operating what I think of as pure play e-commerce brands, where the only way you can buy from the brand is through direct to consumer, growing that footprint, both launching new brands and expanding on ones that already had come through acquisition. And then growing the footprint for brands that are a little bit hybrid. So Burt's Bees is a good example. Burt's Bees has e-commerce directly on the site, but you can also certainly buy it in store, CVS, Target, so forth, Target.com, Amazon even. And so in those areas, it's direct to consumer as part of the pie, playing in an omni-channel way. And so over time, it's been, like I just said with Clorox, in some cases, launching the new capabilities, so actually setting up the fulfillment pipes and supply chain and also the front end store so that there's a new touch point for consumers. But I think ultimately what excites me and the reason direct to consumer exists within Clorox is beyond just direct to consumer revenue as a sales channel, but it is the first party data play behind it. It's offering more closed loop understanding of our consumers. What do they actually interact with? We can do a ton of testing on a PDP. What are the core benefits that actually drive someone to conversion? And then the ongoing relationship that we're able to have right through email programs, loyalty programs, SMS, and so forth. And even direct to consumer as a foundational technology can enable innovation testing. So putting out ghost campaigns or small batch of products to see, what is the actual real world receptiveness to it before we go out and make full pallets worth and get it into retail. And that's something that can easily take up to 18 to 24 months. Whereas direct to consumer, we can actually get a little bit of data pretty quickly in a matter of weeks and months.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's, talk about being nimble and being able to work quickly and get things going. We spoke a little bit yesterday on choice and convenience of D2C and legacy brands and mixing the consumer experience together versus a single defined conversion funnel. So can you talk a little bit about how you're achieving that within Clorox and what does that look like in terms of what it looks like inside Clorox and then what it looks like for the consumer?
Sure, yes. So when I say omni experience, a lot of what the conversation has been internally is say, let's use all of our touch points with the consumer, D2C being one of them, both through our performance media advertising that's out there on social, search, shopping, etc., our email, SMS programs, as well as the website. We want to build the brand. We want to do brand storytelling, want to drive engagement, and then ultimately offer consumers the ability to research and then also purchase on their own terms. And I think this is really in line with a lot of the research that's out there where consumers actually are mixing their research and their purchase phases very common where you see someone in store, in an aisle, they're on their phone, they're maybe on the brand site or on Amazon looking up reviews, or vice versa. They saw something in store, but now they're actually coming in, they're buying on Amazon instead. And so that's when we think about the future of consumer behavior and shopping, is to offer choice and offer convenience in a privacy safe way, and then also set that engagement. So one example of what we're doing under this omni-channel umbrella is that on the actual PDPs for our brands, you can certainly buy direct from the brand, but we also have widgets where you can buy from Amazon, or you could buy from Target.com and so forth, and you see the prices and so forth there. So taking that extra step where we're actually offering that consumer pretty front and center, that convenience to shop wherever they prefer to shop.
Yeah, I love that, meeting the consumer where they are and how they want to shop. I think that, and we see this obviously with a lot of the parent companies, but I would think that having all of the backing of a large parent like Clorox gives you a lot of flexibility and choice and almost freedom up to, we have this legacy on our back that we can do all these cool things, but then we can also shift and be nimble when we want to be in terms of meeting the consumer where they are.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really true. It's in a way kind of adding to that. I think that's been the internal, about internal evolution. Of course, we all want incremental sales and revenue, even through direct to consumer, right? But the recognition over the last few years is that the bigger, I'd say probably more powerful opportunity is leveraging the data that we can capture through either first party data or just understanding consumers, and augmenting that through all of the channels. So what are we learning through direct consumer that we can apply to the Amazon store pages, or put into the retail media that we're running through Target, and then really getting that dialed in. That actually has the larger revenue halo versus focusing narrowly on direct to consumer. And that's where you have that shift where we're open to sending consumers away from the brand if that is their choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so you have the launch of the cleaning suite products for D2C that was announced a few weeks ago. How has that been going, and what can the consumer expect to see? We have Clorox all over our house in terms of wipes and things, like 3 young children. COVID obviously had a play in bringing the cleaning suite front and center. Give us a little insight as to what's going on and what we can expect to see.
Yeah, the cleaning launch is actually, I think, kind of a fun story, also a picture of navigating within a large brand. Cleaning direct to consumer is actually something discussed and contemplated a while ago, and actually got shelved as COVID obviously was ramping up, and all of the resources on the brand got shifted to supply chain, figuring out how to produce wipes in every way possible and getting it to consumers' homes. But then we're not out of COVID, but as the demand for wipes kind of leveled off a little bit more, then we shifted back to what is the direct to consumer play. And I think one of the keys before launching direct to consumer, I think, is being clear on what is the consumer benefit, what are we trying to learn. There's a lot of places now to buy cleaning supplies and wipes, and so it's certainly not, consumers don't need another place. But what we discovered through research is that, especially for younger consumers, Gen Z, millennials, it's pretty confusing figuring out what cleaning products you need. Do you really need the specialty kitchen spray versus the one for bathroom? And then, what kind of wipes, what kind of, toilet cleaning products, and so forth. And so the whole idea behind D2C on Clorox is bundles that walk you through, hey, this is we're only going to give you 3 to 4 choices for each category, instead of, if you go to a Target, you're seeing probably 20, 50 choices. And so making it really easy for consumers to get that bundle, get it shipped to your home. We don't have subscription, but that's something that we're talking about for the future. And for the brand, the whole idea is just to learn. What do people try to bundle together? Where's the interest? Do people would like to have pre-built bundles versus custom bundles? There's a couple of quizzes on the site as well. And so our clear learning agenda is about understanding the younger demographic of consumers. How can we come alongside their lives and relieve some of the confusion as it comes to finding cleaning products beyond just wipes, which is kind of what everyone knows.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's one of the things that I think all learned in dealing with COVID is efficiency and simplicity is paramount. And I think that's a really smart way of thinking about bringing this to market. And I always know that, going through the aisles, sometimes it's like, where is the exact product that I'm looking for? So bringing that to a younger audience, I think is really smart. I love that insight. Also gives us a little transition to talk a little bit about the consumer journey and the audiences that you are reaching. What does the life cycle look like for some of the core D2C brands, and how are you taking some of those learnings to the legacy brands? And love to learn a little bit about what that looks like from your side.
Yeah, I think not surprisingly, the biggest takeaway is that life cycle and that journey looks really different depending on the brand, depending on the category. So our supplements brands are much more high touch, where it's a multivitamin. People need a new multivitamin replacement every 30, 60 days, depending on if you're a habitual user or not. And so that is much more of a sell and subscription play, and focused on introducing more products within the family of wellness. Burt's Bees, most people know us for the lip balms, but how can we start expanding into get them to trial skincare or sun protection and so forth. And then like cleaning, we just talked about, very much focus on the bundle pieces of it. So every one of those has different types of journeys, but the core base playbook, if you will, is obviously high touch acquisition, interactivity on the site, and then kind of robust email programs for nurture, both for welcome. If someone does sign up for an email, we have acquisition prompts on the site, get a discount or get on exclusive product release lists, product specific journeys. If someone purchases a product, here's the education reminders every call it 30 days, or when a Brita filter is due for replacement. So really it's figuring out what are the right cadence, and a ton of testing behind it, on when's the right place to talk to consumers, and then also expanding into new channels for engagement. So SMS is one that we're seeing a lot of success for, and actually maybe not typically thought of for direct to consumer. We also do direct mail, catalogs, postcards, and so forth. And so kind of all of those things have been really effective levers where we talk to our existing consumers who have already raised their hand, given us their information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think you hit on a couple of tactics that are very one-to-one focused, and I think when you're retargeting, that is a really smart way. We always talk to our brands and consumers about, we know out of home is a one-to-many, and for product launch works very well. We've always been thought of as that upper funnel, but adding in mobile and retargeting based on proximity has been a huge lever to bring some of the performance metrics into our channel, which we love to see, because that's the big thing. Like, how do we define success, and what does that look like holistically? I imagine you're dealing with a lot of it too, that is becoming harder and harder to pinpoint. Media channels are changing. The way that you can target consumers is changing. We're still in a little bit of unknown. some larger parent companies are kicking the can down the road for another year to see how that's going to affect brand marketers and performance marketers. But we'd love to get a little insight as to the channels, outside of the ones you just mentioned that you might find success for product launch, and then what does success look like for you guys in terms of some of the brands you work on?
Yeah, I think so. All of this talk, right, about consumer engagement and acquiring first-party data, I think that for marketers is becoming more and more important as targeting gets harder, cookie apocalypse, whenever that comes, right? And I think, what excites me is what we're actually seeing from consumers is that they're more willing to engage with brands than potentially ever, especially younger consumers, and wanting to co-create and identifying with brands based off of their actual value systems. And so I think it is a new phase of thinking about how do you engage in a much more two-way process. So for, you're saying kind of for product launches, we have a lot of the typical playbook, right? Google, Facebook, and influencers is really well. So does affiliate, kind of blog posting and so forth there. I mentioned it earlier. SMS is one that we really have been pleasantly surprised on. And I think the key is to not just duplicate an email program, but to say how do you make it unique and differentiated? So for Burt's Bees, we have SMS for exclusive product drops, special announcements. Even there's two-way chat interactivity with some built-in prompts, asking consumers for additional information, kind of demographics information. And we're seeing just amazing stats of consumer willingness to share, to the point where we're actually using SMS to build a little bit of a hive community of, here are our younger consumers who are very loyal, who we can use as a test bed for new campaign ideas, new product innovation, and getting real feedback from people. And that really just came out of the success that we're seeing in that channel.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So looking ahead, is there anything that you think you're thinking of? I imagine that when you mention influencers, you're looking at platforms like TikTok and other short form video creator content. Do you see more of your share going to those platforms and less of the traditional social feeds, or how is any of those sort of media mix shifted in the last, 18 months, 9 months, 6 months even?
Yeah. I think we're still testing it out. Some of it is shifting. So certainly doing more with TikToks and leveraging influencers there. But also it's within the existing channels, how are we approaching it differently? So Facebook's a good example. I'd say historically for us, Facebook spend was mostly just for brand awareness, brand building. So really high quality produced videos, a lot of assets around that. What we've really added is a lot of retargeting, dynamic product ads that leverage the feeds, scrappier creative, sometimes even shot on an iPhone that has product, specific product forward. And we're doing a lot of testing behind that. Is it, do consumers care more about the benefits that they're getting, or is it more of a lifestyle shot? Or do they want to learn about the overarching brand, like Burt's Bees first, or they actually want to see the specific skincare product that would apply to them? And so I think there's still a ton of room within all the existing channels to expand and to kind of tweak. So I'd say our media mix is shifting less so because into all of the newer emerging channels, and more so of moving away from strict brand media that may have been primarily reach and impression based, and saying how can we think about that investment differently?
Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting. We talked a little bit yesterday about being nimble in your category specifically. Has there been any challenges recently? Obviously, we're facing some market conditions that we're still in some unknowns. Talk a little bit about how does that affect your day to day and what you're doing to look ahead, and especially on the D2C side, how you can be nimble and react to what's going on in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure we've all lived through it. It feels like every week is you build a media plan and you turn around, you have to like rip up the media plan and like do another one, right? Whether it has been social political issues, supply chain issues, now inflation, new product launches or things going out of stock. We have so much of that. I think the biggest learning has been organizationally, how do we make sure that the right folks are in the right room and talking on a constant basis, so that we're minimizing the information lag as much as we can between when product supply suspects that we might have something going out of stock, down to how do we actually get ahead and have something like on the PDP, if we're out of stock on raspberry lemon gummies, suggesting to consumers, hey, what about the orange flavored gummies? And getting emails out there proactively for consumers that we know have bought that product, and translating it through to all of our media. And so that it sounds super simple, but it has been very complicated just to get the right people talking together internally. And then I think just generally being nimble, that's one thing I think inherent to direct to consumer is we are always in this like MVP kind of mindset, right? How do you get something out there, look at the actual data, and then use that to improve? And so we're really taking that kind of mindset to all of the brands beyond even just direct to consumer, to say, how do we approach that from brand building perspective to innovation, right? Getting these like ghost campaigns out there, so we have a little bit of data before we invest 100% of resources into launching the new cleaning product. That's, I think, a lot of what excites me about where we are with a legacy company like a CPG. Mm-hmm. There's a recognition of needing to move fast, adapting to all of the market conditions that keep changing. And so there's an appetite to work with and in some ways kind of learn from the playbook about what has worked for D2C and D2C startups in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes me think like, it sounds like everything's been very successful. So is there more on the horizon outside of what we know so far? And, I would say that the shift of meeting the consumer where they are is never going away at this point. Like the cat is out of the bag, as they would say. How does that affect Clorox? Are they thinking about furthering the products that they're going to start offering, or are they going to continue to look at acquisitions? Does that or launch new products within the categories they're already in?
A little bit of everything, all of the above.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly an appetite to continue growing through either launching new brands or lines of brands, or through acquisition in a way that is more like digitally minded, not 100% reliant on in-store retail. So I think there's definitely that. Kind of forgot the first part of your question, but I don't
know if you can even speak to it, but just is there more acquisitions on the horizon? Has it you're 4 years or almost 5 years into this now, or I would think that there's been a slew of success with it. Is Clorox looking to do more in the space outside of the categories they're in?
Yeah. I can't, definitively say, right, like we're always looking at outside categories. Certainly, there's still a ton of room to say, how do we launch more within the existing portfolio of brands that don't have direct to consumer? And some of it requires innovation around shipping or like product, the sizes that consumers might get. So I think there's a lot of that still. But it also has not all been just like smooth sailing at all, right? Like there's a lot of organizational challenges for brands that have traditionally always relied on retailer relationships to build that first party consumer connection. Now you have direct to consumer. What workflows have to change? How do you get fulfillment and think about supply chain differently? There's a lot of work that's we've kind of, I'd say, hacked to now. And then now more like from an enterprise level, trying to say, okay, how do we actually enable that from an ongoing perspective? I think a lot of the discussion is to say, how do we expand beyond just direct to consumer? Third-party marketplaces are interesting. Retail media networks are super interesting. All of the ghost delivery and connected commerce. There's just like a lot of players, even within the current brands, to say, how do we take the next step to meet consumers where they are?
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and that's definitely something that we think about a lot. One of the last things we can touch on, I think we're coming up on close to our time here. We talked yesterday a little bit about brand versus performance and how those things are shifting. We're seeing it in the out-of-home space. We launched programmatic in 2019. We have a digital direct ad server now. We're seeing CPG campaigns come in from shopper marketing groups that we've never seen before. So when you talk about retail media networks and different ways of meeting the consumer, I think a lot of brands are thinking about, at least our channel and out of home a little bit differently. There's so many more digital screens, the nimbleness of dynamic creative optimization, all of these things that you couldn't do in the past, are ways that we're trying to engage the consumer more. But you still sort of have to think about two different sides of the table, and brand, versus performance. Do you see anything shifting on one side or the other? Obviously, we talked a little bit about some of the technology aspects changing and how you target. We've heard it from a lot of different brand marketers that brand is super important. And so I'd love to kind of end with some of your takes on both sides of the table.
Yeah, this is a topic I could talk much longer than anyone wants to listen to me talk about. I fundamentally do believe that performance media and direct response has brought measurement and some more precise, like call it optimization tools and levers to the table, but I don't think it has to be only used to drive towards return on ad spend or a conversion point. And so a lot of what we're now looking at is how do we actually use those types of channels and levers to actually still be building the brand, and vice versa. I think like traditionally brand channels like PR or out of home in your world or TV actually can drive a lot of performance and actual revenue. You can see the sales lifts, whether in store, Amazon, and so forth. And so I think that is fundamentally the shift. And core principles, I think one is messaging and creative. How do we make sure that there's consistency, that just because it's performance, it's not just like spammy out there. And then second, measurement, really holding all channels accountable to all measures, not necessarily expecting the same, cost per conversion from every channel or the same reach and brand impact, but thinking about like what's the balance and utilizing all channels towards both goals. And that is going well. It's a big change to how we do media planning. And so it's kind of thinking about like, what are the channels we're holding more towards short-term effect versus like long-term effect. But I think it's getting internal teams comfortable with that idea. It is a risk, and how we've seen success is by testing into it, shifting 10%, then 20, then 30, 40% of spends from, brand into performance, or, even vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. We do have a question from the audience. What is ghost delivery?
Yeah, it's essentially like, if you've heard of like ghost kitchens. So storefronts that partner with, the Ubers, Uber Eats, and delivery services out there that are not necessarily a real physical location. And so we're taking that same idea to CPG, where getting the product out there without actually having a retail store, utilizing things like the 15-minute grocery delivery, vendors out there, the Instacarts and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So do you think of that as we've seen those teams grow their product offering in the media landscape. Do you see a shift of the performance side of that's more of a performance play for you, advertising within those ecosystems?
Yes and no. Yes, like I think right now it's more of a direct like channel, almost like shopper marketing play behind it. But it's just about getting more distribution out there, right? So actually, I think ultimately it ladders up to brand building, because consumers, a new to file consumer seeing us maybe as the banner on Instacart, and then seeing us on Uber and so forth, like that is innately kind of building brand awareness in the same way like a display banner would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can see that. In a previous life, I was doing a lot of mobile marketing, and so I know that they can play a role in both. So and that's something that we talk to our brands about here at Outfront as well with our mobile marketing offering. Another question: how does the process begin between D2C and brand marketing? Do you approach them vice versa?
So I actually, and maybe slightly different, counter to others who might be D2C backgrounds, I actually start with brand. Like, what is the brand trying to achieve? What is the full year brand marketing goal? Because brand marketing, I think, tends to be like longer term, a little bit broader. And then we say, how can D2C play and be supportive of that? Whether it is choosing specific tentpole campaigns where we feel like we could amplify, or if there's 3 top products that are the core focus, can we go really deep on certain products using product feeds and things like shopping campaigns to drive additional awareness of it? What can we do in terms of testing? Because D2C does tend to be the fastest testing channel that we have to inform something that the brand team can then use and roll out into all of their brand marketing campaigns. And so in our case, it usually starts with brand marketing first, and then D2C cascading out of that.
Got it. Cool. Well, thank you for answering that. Thank you for joining us and sharing all that wonderful insight. We are, I don't know, if EB, are we good on time? Are we ready to kick it over to
you were awesome. That was so meaty. That was just chock full of terrific information. I really want to thank both of you. I know that I'm looking for a Burt's Bees bundle, and I'm looking forward to figuring out what's the cleanser for my sink versus, this and that. So I loved all of your insights about, how you're approaching channels differently as well. Just great information, Vivian and James. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All righty. So next up, it's a twofer. We have 2 people, two from AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch. Caitlin Partridge is Global Marketing Director for Mike's, and Victoria Bina Montero is Connections Global Director for NA Bev. So with that, I want to welcome them and their fabulous moderator, Stephen Elliott. Stephen is the VP of Client Development and Partnerships for Rad AI. This is going to be a good one. Two on one. Thanks, everybody. And Mike's on and you're good to go.
Amazing. And thank you. And wonderful job, James and Vivian. And I would just say minor addition, I'd say 2+1. Meeting with Caitlin and Bina has been amazing. And so I'm looking forward to this, and it's great to see you both again. How are you all doing?
Doing great, Stephen. Great to see you.
Great. Thank you, Stephen.
Great. And I'm going to call myself out because maybe everybody's already doing it. I was trying to get my background flipped 50-50 or flipped 180. So looks like Bina and Caitlin are getting a gold star today, not me. Yet I do think today's going to be really special, just looking at what Bina has been doing and in a new role. And then Caitlin, if you wouldn't mind leveraging now a little over 5 years there, would you mind sharing really what are you focusing on right now and really next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can jump in. So I'm the global director for Mike's and Brutal Fruit in our Beyond Co team at AB InBev. So we call it Beyond because it's beyond beer as a beer company. My group really focuses on the products that are not beer and alcoholic still. So I've been leading the global expansion for Mike's Hard Lemonade over the last 3.5 years, and now doing the same for a brand from South Africa called Brutal Fruit.
Yeah, incredible. I loved how whenever I shared my experience of recently trying a Mike's Hard Lemonade and just being drawn back to a child actually selling lemonade to make money to buy toys, and hearing that's what you all are trying to capture.
Yeah, absolutely. So the part of the inspiration behind it is flavors that everyone's familiar with. And of course, you still have that bit of nostalgia as an adult, those familiar flavors that maybe you just want to kick up a bit with some alcohol.
Yes, and Bina, it's incredible. Again, I'm thinking that you're down in Brazil and we're all able to come together and just recently having a new transition into the role. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what you were doing and then now where you're heading?
Sure. Hello, nice to meet everyone. So I'm Bina. I used to be head of connections for the non-alc at AB InBev. So my role was to help brands towards digital transformation and overall. So everything around data, media, creative, Web3, metaverse, all these new stuffs. So helping our brands on how better engage with our consumers. So that's why we're here to talk about consumer engagement. And now I'm transitioned to a new role on the D2C. So my role is a little bit different. So helping brands looking for our own D2C channels. So how they can connect better with our channels, how they can create a better journey for our consumers. So that's my new role. Now I'm in the middle of transition, but today I'm here as connections.
Incredible. And hearing what you're both have been doing and then where you're heading, I love it. And especially as when we were connecting, thinking about making brands really more creator focused and then engaging through purpose. I find that's fascinating. I'm sure we're going to get into that then with the presentation. Do you think right now, Caitlin, would be a good time to transition into that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. I received confirmation that only for me is my background flipped. So you all probably think I'm crazy now.
No, I think we're all good now. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and jump in. So of course, today we're all talking about engaging consumers, and Bina and I are going to be talking specifically about engaging Gen Z, because those are really the consumers that we in our groups are focused on today as the core target for both of our portfolios of brands. And of course, before we start to think about engaging consumers, it really starts with understanding them. So just to ground us all, Just a little bit of context of Gen Z. I'm sure everyone's really been very focused on Gen Z lately, so probably not a ton of new news, but it really sets up the context for some of the themes that we're going to be talking about in terms of engaging this audience. So of course, just first demographically, who are they? Really, this generation refers to the generation between about 1997 to 2012, depending on who you ask. They have a global spending power of over 200 billion, and they account for over 40% of consumers worldwide. So this is really a huge demographic, a huge opportunity for brand engagement and brand building. And an important just cultural context that we see, of course, is this is truly a generation without borders. This is a global generation. They have grown during a time of a ton of political and financial turmoil and worldwide social events that have really impacted the way that this generation views the world. Another thing that has really impacted how they view the world is their digital savviness. More than any generation before them, these are true digital natives. They were born on digital platforms, and they really expect that quick access to information. And that all leads to a constant exposure to different viewpoints, opinions, and lifestyles. So really that drives them to consider themselves as more accepting and more open-minded than any other generation before them. We see that about 70% of Gen Zers globally are really involved in social or political causes, and that's higher than millennials before them and the generations before them. So that leads really into what motivates them to engage with brands. What is driving some of their brand decisions? And that directly connects to this point that we see that 9 in 10 of Gen Zers want the brands that they buy to get involved in the causes that better the world. They're really looking for brands that share their values, share in the causes that they care about. And they're really expecting those brands to use their reach and their money to fuel change. They are paying more attention to really, are these brands authentically committed to these causes? Are they using their power to help to better the world? So I'm going to let Bina then share an example from one of our brands here that we have in the portfolio.
Thank you, Caitlin. So just connecting what Caitlin was saying, I think even after pandemic, it's stronger now that the Gen Z and all the younger generation are looking for brands with like real purpose and genuine purpose that connected them in the end. So I brought here 2 cases from Guaraná. Guaraná is a huge soft drink brand in Brazil. Like it's huge, like penetration is more than 90%. And this first case was awarded in Cannes last year. And the second was won a Gold Lion this year in Cannes. So I'm gonna let you watch it and then I comment the case, but really in the end, it's really helping like a huge gap that I have in Brazil. That's Brazil, it's a country of soccer. And we know that men players, they have much more than women. So it's all, the 2 cases are a little bit about it. So can go play. Thank you.
Brazil, the country of soccer. Really? For who? Every year, brands invest $1 billion more in men's soccer than in women's. The excuse? It lacks visibility. If that's the problem, then wait a second. Here is your visibility. Guaraná presents She Can. Guaraná Antarctica is a major soda brand in Brazil. We have over 35 million cans running around the country every month. That represents a reach bigger than any YouTube channel or TV show. What if we turned our can into a media outlet so other brands could be displayed on them in exchange for investment in our girls? So we simply did it. We created a campaign inviting other brands to advertise on our cans and transformed them into the hottest media spot in town. In 1 week, 100 brands subscribed and 10 of them paid $100,000 for the spot. Global brands like Burger King, Avon, and Lay's joined our effort and the money went straight to a girls' academy. Our She Cans reached the market and girl, it was a hit. And other brands went even further. Puma offered its factories for uniforms. The Bank BMG officially sponsored other clubs, and ESPN broadcasted women's finals for the first time ever. So, can after can, we can build a fair future for women, whether we talk about soccer or about life. Don't you agree?
So this one was from last year, and then I have another one from this year.
Hey, are you aware that the investment made in women's soccer today is the same what men received in the 80s? Remember the men's final in 82? It had a $20 million prize, which is exactly the same value for the women's final in 2019. It's like our girls were stuck in the 80s. Guaraná Antártica is a major soda brand in Brazil, an official sponsor of women's soccer since forever. So we decided to go to the biggest sporting event in the world to draw attention to the matter, asking for approval of the bill that fights for equal prize money for men and women in sports in the country. Minor detail. The Olympics are globally sponsored by our main, richer, almighty competitor. So we asked the National Women's Soccer League players a little favor, and they arrived in Tokyo carrying gadgets from the 80s.
Vamos começar com post da Formiga. Ela fez desabafo dizendo que tá presa nos 80.
Igniting, with Guaraná, the Stuck in the 80s movement, which quickly was all over press and even became the official theme of the biggest and most prestigious soccer awards in Brazil, hosted by ESPN. But if we wanted to change the law, we had to make a whole country understand what it means to be stuck in the 80s. So we relaunched our classic 80s bottle for real, making the conversation become not only a stunt, but a constant reminder of the girls' reality for our more than 35 million monthly consumers looking for Guaraná on the shelves. Of course, 100% of its sales proceeds went to help correct the prize money gap by directly supporting women's soccer in Brazil. Back to the future. Remember the bill we wanted approved? Well, it passed Congress. It sounds like the 80s will be finally behind us.
So just brought two examples to show how a brand can really work on purpose, like that matters the young generation. And today we are, this year is a year of the World Cup. So Guaraná is also again coming with a huge initiative for women in soccer. Guaraná is a sponsor from the official sponsor for the men and women soccer team here in the Brazilian selection. So next, more to come on this subject.
Bina, if I may comment on that, real quick, that's fascinating. I think about growing up in Venezuela. Guaraná was my first energy drink, I used to say. So I've been drinking that since 1997 and has been a staple in my life since then. And then seeing how you connect the brand and then connect the brand with other brands with the purpose and everything, I believe that's really incredible to see what you've done with that.
Yeah, that was huge in Brazil. Like we saw like a movement of all the brands joining and really making a difference for the women players. So it was a very nice movement, very nice, well played from the brand side. So.
Yeah, incredible. All right, sorry, Caitlin, go ahead.
No, it's such a great case. I love that one, both of them, and the evolution of the consistency on that purpose is so great. So then the next theme really is somewhat connected, but a different lens really on the connection to brand and what Gen Z is really looking for and expecting from the brands that they want to engage with. So the underlying factors of it really are that Gen Z is really a group who is educated, aware, and skeptical of brand marketing. They have been exposed to constant marketing and promotion through the channels that they use on a daily basis. Again, more so than any other generation before them. They're constantly bombarded with brand marketing. And at the same time, they've also learned to manage their own brand image. They're so engaged in their own online presence, their own social media. They have been building their own brand for quite a while. So for them, they're really fluent in the language of advertising. Marketing is really second nature to them. They're savvy consumers who really are paying attention to whether or not brands are being authentic and being honest, and they will expose those brands if they feel that they're failing on their responsibility to the consumers. And they have the platforms now to really do that as well. So they're really looking for brands, and they want these brands to communicate with honesty, integrity, and authenticity. And there's a number of different kind of expressions of this. So they're looking and really engaging with brands that use humor and self-awareness or self-deprecation. Even the KFC, FCK example from a while back is a great one. I'm just being like, yep, we messed up, we're screwed, and kind of having fun with that and being honest and playful with it. They're also they're appreciative of brand-to-brand narratives, brands behaving like people, acknowledging that there are other brands out there, not pretending that they're the only ones around. And that connects to also brands creating relatable consumer interactions. So kind of the brand to brand narratives and brand to consumer narratives. Domino's is a great example of this. There's so many great fast food brands that do a great job, Wendy's, et cetera. Burger King talking to their consumers, particularly in Twitter, and really entering those conversations and having that personality and playfulness. They're also looking for brands to educate and bring enriching content, really showing what their value propositions are, being forthright with that. And they're also looking for, of course, inclusivity and empathy from brands. That is table stakes now and completely expected from all brands that Gen Z is looking to engage with. And finally, they're looking for shareable content. They are the meme generation. Their social currency is content. So if brands can give them content that is shareable with their friends, that's something that they truly do value. So I'm going to share a case study from Mike's Hard Lemonade and the global campaign that we've used to launch in our new markets that really is focused on this idea of self-awareness, being a brand, acting like a brand, and creating these brand to brand narratives. And this is the way that we were really looking to engage with a new audience as we were a brand new brand launching in these markets.
Escúchame, ¿viste la Mike en el comercial de cerveza? What the fuck?
¿Qué una Mike?
Oh, hey. Welcome to the Mikes in a Beer World case study. Fun fact, in South America, when 18 to 24-year-olds hang out together, everyone brings beer. See? Beer, 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 beer! The truth is, not everyone likes beer. So as we launched Mike's in these new countries, we didn't have to fight beer. We just needed to tag along. And that's what we did with our ads. We took every beer ad on air and we put Mike's in. See? We crashed their ads. We crashed this ad, this ad, this ad, this ad. We crashed this ad too, and we didn't stop there. We even filmed our ads in the middle of their ads, but from a different POV, and show that wherever beer goes, Mike's can go too.
Aquí estoy tomando Mike's en un comercial de póker. Que no a todos nos gusta la cerveza.
And we ran both commercials back to back. Look.
Tô aqui bebendo Mike's no comercial de Bud. Nem todo mundo bebe cerveja o tempo todo, né?
Talk about saving those production dollars, huh? All we needed was to bring our cameras to their shoot.
Você deve ter me visto bebendo uma Mike's num comercial de Spaten.
And then we shared their social posts. Their out of home, their point of sale, their e-commerce. Seriously, how the hell did we do all that?
Everyone was happy to have us join along because it was based on a true insight. So we saw that as an opportunity for Mike's to be able to partner with those big advertisers for greater exposure. It's more than just crashing beer ads. It's really a symbiotic relationship between these brands.
It's crazy because Mike's has helped us to sell a lot of beer too.
kind of campaign that only ABI could pull off.
It's more than a win-win. It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
So not only has this been a communication platform for us and done through commercials, but we've extended it as well in how we engage with influencers, how we show up at events, how we're really addressing all consumer touch points that we have as a brand. And the feedback from consumers has been incredible because we're being forthright. We're identifying this is the problem that exists. There are 20% of consumers out there who are looking for an alternative to beer, and there aren't really many options for them in these occasions where beer is the go-to choice. And the consumers, the tribe that we're talking to, have really shown an appreciation for just being upfront and truthful about that reality and showing how Mike's can address that need. So switching gears a little bit, talking about connections platforms and where and through what kind of platforms we can connect with this generation to drive engagement. Of course, we look at their top interests, and they have a lot of the same ones as millennials: music, sports, travel, but where they really over-index and break apart a bit is in the space of gaming. So 47% of Gen Z have an interest in gaming, and that is at a 132 index versus millennials, which are at 38%. So that, of course, is more of an emerging platform and really a passion point of this audience. And a big reason for that is it's connected to their value of authenticity and self-identity, and it's a way for them to express their self-identity, and at times a way to escape reality, again, because they are living in such tumultuous times and dealing with a lot. So some of the things we see in this space are that 83% of Gen Z are interested in participating in the metaverse. 61% have visited an online space like Fortnite, Roblox, Decentraland, etc. in the past month. So this is really a growing space for them. And Bina has another case study to share for us related to this space.
So I brought this case study. It's from another brand. It's from Pony Malta. I don't know if you know, Steven, Pony Malta?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So Pony Malta is a malted, non-alcoholic malted beverage from Colombia. It's a nutritional beverage, mainly focused in Gen Z or like working class also. It's very nutritional. And I brought this case, it's about gaming, but it's also about purpose. And gaming is a huge passion point, of course, for the brand because of the, as Caitlin was mentioned, as gaming as one of the main passion points for the Gen Z. So it's a win-win for both sides. So let's see this case and then I can comment after.
In 2016, FIFA included female professional football players in its video game.
I'm in the game. Yo me spela. Estamos en el juego. We're in the game. We're in the game. We're in the game. We're in the game.
Pero yo no estoy en el juego. Ni yo, ni yo, ni yo.
FIFA Clubs Pro, the way to create an avatar with your own image, form a club and make a career as a football player, only allows you to create male avatars, not female ones. Isn't this crazy? So we decided to hack the game. Pony Malta, the beverage that inspires teenagers to be as good as they can be, presents She Football Club, an initiative that allowed all women to be represented in FIFA 21, the most popular video game in the world. We invited the best female gamers in the country to create their own avatar from the male player impersonation tools, to make them part of the She Football Club.
Estoy muy orgullosa del desempeño de nuestro partido.
A club that allowed them to make a career as women and face other men's clubs. Thousands of women from around the world and even professional football players joined the movement.
Pony Malta lidera una iniciativa para pedirle a la FIFA que el video de juego de fútbol más popular del mundo incluya a las mujeres en su modo carrera.
12 million impressions. Record of views and tweets for the brand. 250,000 users during the streaming. But that was not all. At change.org, we created a petition asking EA Sports to include women in FIFA Clubs Pro mode. We wore our club's jersey with all the signatures collected at the EA Sports headquarters. And good news arrived from FIFA 2022. FIFA 22 did it. They included the option in FIFA Clubs Pro to create a female avatar and make a career with it. And people praise their initiative. Once again, now all women can be represented on their video game. She Football Club. We hacked a video game to represent all women.
I think this case is very nice, and this team, CFC, that is a women players team, it still exists and it's going really well. So we now have plans to start putting them to compete in different champions besides Colombia, so going global and etc. So it's a huge initiative and flag that the brand is raising on gaming and also helping women in gaming. That's it.
Yeah, Bina, to comment on that, yes. I mean, I remember growing up Sunday afternoons drinking Malta with pirulí, and definitely an incredible experience. And then seeing that again, it reminded me of when we were connecting, how you both mentioned it's understanding where they participate, where is this happening. And I really love here, this really highlights how you know how to participate and to go in there and create that, not just a one-touch engagement, but then that's creating a movement and something that people are really lifted and inspired by.
Yes,
incredible job again.
For sure. Like a cultural movement that really connects organically with the generation, that engage with them in a natural way. So that's the main goal, our main goal as marketeers in ABI.
That's amazing. So the next place, of course, to go is looking at their behaviors within social media, and really the reasons for using social media for this generation really boiled down to entertainment and staying on top of topics and trends. And of course, the platforms that we see really resonating with this generation. Instagram is still a big one, and really their most used daily platform. But platforms like TikTok and Reddit, of course, are rapidly growing in popularity. And here, Bina has brought a great case on how Guarana, again, that brand from Brazil, is really leveraging content, as we've mentioned a number of times, to engage this audience.
Yeah, so this case will tell a little bit. So how can we transform Guarana in a publisher mindset brand? Bringing these creators mindset from the scratch and from the nature for the brand. So I'm going to start showing you also a case, and then I'm going to explain a little bit how we did it.
And then it happened. One day I woke up and realized, God, I'm old. When I was born 100 years ago, everyone liked me. Talking to young people was easy. I was cool. I was fun. I was pop. When I realized new brands appeared and competition was already on my tail. To make matters worse, their main brand is loaded. And young people, they have changed. Hey, easy. This is not a sad story. This is the story of how we came up with a fucking good strategy to turn this shit around. What we did? First, we set our positioning through the lens of Coisa Nosa. It was as if we had an inside joke shared with 200 million Brazilians. Then we adapted our creative team. Since young people no longer want to watch TV commercials, we learned how to make the digital content they wanted. Welcome to the era of Guarana creators. That's how the Coisa Nosa channel was born. A YouTube phenomenon achieved by giving creative freedom for our squad to create for the brand. Then we took over Twitter with organic content, trending memes, and challenging the competitors in real time. Finally, our Lord of Creativity trilogy hit TikTok with a performance that, well, between you and me, became reference in Brazil. We managed to turn consumers into fans. Seems like magic. Only if magic is made of data, strategy, creativity, a little patience, and a whole lot of boldness and humor to reconnect us with young people. See?
The Guaraná is on the table.
Tastes like youth spirit, right?
Ay, papai, linda!
So this case tells a little bit the transformation from the brand. So Caitlin, if you can go to the next one, please.
And then it happened.
So the brand turned 100 years last year, and then 2019, we're in the discussion, how can a centennial brand really can continue connecting with the younger generation, so becoming younger. And the next one. So we decided to do a digital revolution with the brand and test, because it is non-alc, so we have less restrictions than beer and then alcohol brands. We could test everything. So really doing a digital revolution on the way you communicate, on the way you use the social channel to communicate with the young generation. So, and then of course, using data to listen to them, to understand what they want and how can I connect better with this audience. And then the next one. So we shifted the mindset from a brand communication to publisher mindset. That means in the end, having a team of creators working with us in different channels, creating content that really connects and are native from that channel and are interesting and in the context, in the culture from the Gen Z, from the consumer. So in the next one. So we shift from creating a campaign broken in assets, from we give a brief to creators and they create their own assets based on this huge concept from the brand. And of course, humor is a huge pillar. So memes and etc. So that's another tool that Kathleen was also mentioned in the beginning. It's another way for us to really connect with the audience. And we also shift a little bit from offline focus to digital focus, of course, because of the Gen Z is really a digital native generation. And then in the next one, I think we can go through because I think I'm really worried about the time. So let's jump this one. And then here is a little bit of how we did it. The slides a little bit break, but this is the recipe of the cake. So giving freedom for creators. If they have a clear brief, they can create under that brief. Being native creative, so understanding the role of the channel and create content native for that channel specifically. And then fast culture posts, using data to help us mainly. So understanding we have a routine that every day we check the main trends on social, what people are talking, what is coming. So to understand, to see how can I create, what can create new for Guaraná in different channels and etc. And of course, the ways of working. So quick test and learn culture, test creators, test content and etc. And WOW can then run. So you see that we did a transformation in all the social channels from the brand, but we started with one channel. And then when we saw it was working, we moved to another one. So we didn't do everything at the same time. We're trying to organize and improve, and also have clear KPI. Sorry, and then the next one. So this is a little bit of what we did. We had consistency and patience. So the slides a little bit break also for me, but we started with YouTube, and then Twitter, and then TikTok, and now we are reviewing all the Instagram and Facebook strategy too. And then the next one, to have clear KPIs, having the right metrics, having the right brief, giving freedom to the creator, and then like to have a clear North Star. I think it's the best like recipe. And just to finish, I can go in the next one. One thing that is very nice, like our YouTube channel today is the #1 most engaged influential brand channel in Brazil, and the most engaged and influential beverage brand channel in the world. So we have around 150K USD AdSense per year that we reinvest in the channel. Our TikTok channel is the #2 brand beverage segment globally, and our Twitter channel is also huge comparing to Ambev here in Brazil. And what is also very nice that when we measure in the next one, the brand power from consumers that follow our channels that don't follow, we have a higher brand power with the ones that also follow those channels. So it proves in the end that nice content really helps building brands. So finished this topic. Thank you.
Amazing. I think, yeah, since we're coming up on time, I'll skip this example. We can wrap up and take any Q&As. So just to summarize some of the key themes that we've discussed. So ways to engage with this audience and things to think about. Number one, engaging through purpose. Brands are really expected to use their power for good. This group of people are really looking and expecting that, looking for brands that share their values and that do use their power to make the world a better place. And then number two, engaging with honesty, integrity, authenticity, and self-awareness. It's okay to be real, to behave like a brand, to break the fourth wall a bit, not trying to be perfect all the time. I think co-creation is such a great opportunity for this as well, that drives that engagement and really gives the consumer a feeling of ownership and belonging with the brands as well. And then finally, engaging where they are, understand their passion points, understand the media platforms. We didn't talk as much about purchase behaviors, but that's as well a big theme with this audience. As D2C becomes much more relevant, they're much more comfortable making purchases through digital platforms. And that's another great way, as was highlighted in the last fireside chat, of using purchasing moments to build brands and build engagement as well. So yeah, those are the key themes, and we can discuss a little bit more and take any questions.
Yes, well, Caitlin and Bina, we actually do have two wonderful questions coming in from Trevor. I apologize, stay sick if I say that wrong yet. Caitlin, the first one is for you. So Trevor says, you mentioned Gen Z and 40% are engaged with gaming. How are you placing your alcoholic brands into the games like Roblox when those games have underage audiences? Is there a way to segment who sees what within the game?
Yeah, so we're very careful about the platforms in this space and gaming in the metaverse that we do enter into with our alcoholic brands, and that's why actually in the non-alc space we have a lot more examples there and are doing more there, because it is still very restrictive, and that's been the case. It's still the case with platforms like TikTok. Any new emerging digital channels tend to not have the segmenting capabilities that we need, or the right balance and mix of the over legal drinking age consumer population that we require for our brands to go into those spaces. But there are gaming platforms and ways that we are able to enter the space. So for Mike's, for example, we're really looking at getting into that space by engaging more through Twitch, partnering with the influencers that have the legal drinking age audience, and doing more streams that are targeted rather than entering into the platforms where there is an underage drinking audience, and we're not able to segment that. We just simply won't go into those spaces until we can segment those.
Amazing. And Bina, for you, it says, for the FIFA game, are you seeing people connect with the brand with the women's avatar in the game? I think it's great what you're doing, but are you seeing mindshare increase from that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And the answer, yes. And then Pony Malta, sorry, is really helping the Chef C, the women team. So when they are not playing just FIFA, but they also playing other games, so Free Fire and etc. But when Gen Z watch the game, so they usually watch the streaming of the games. So people playing and somebody commenting on the team playing also together. So when on the team's t-shirts, we have Pony Malta's brand and also other brands, because the team is so huge now that other brands also join the movement. So when they see the streamer of the game, they see the brands, they see everything around the players.
Incredible. Well, thank you both. Obrigado, Bina and Caitlin.
Obrigado.
Incredible work to you both, your teams, your partners, and for me, I am thrilled and excited to continue to engage with the brands, to consume the brands, to share them, and seeing what you all are baking up next. So wonderful job, and thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you all. And now I have a little shopping list for my trip to Brazil next year. I have some stuff I have to try.
Yes.
We did a brunette swap out.
You can find Guaraná in US.
Perfect.
Look at Amazon. Just look there.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you a lot.
We have a bit of a cast change. I'm Carrie Keenan. I'm one of the wow, I forgot what I do, Stephen. I'm one of the team here at Brand Innovators. Just want to bring in our next speakers. I'm excited to have Alistair Green, the Chief Brand Officer of Makuna Foods, and their moderator, Stacey Boer, Senior Vice President of Sales of Crisp. And I'm sorry if I just messed up both of your brand name pronunciations. I apparently have a problem with words today.
Hello.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having us. Hey there. How you doing?
Good, I think. Who knows? I was panicking with my microphone at that point in time to go, I hadn't unheard. Makuna is how you pronounce our name.
Okay, and I'm panicking because at this very second, someone's walking in. My dog is about to go crazy. So it's perfect if that happens.
Also, if your dog starts barking, I'll start mouthing. It'll look like me. It'll be very funny.
Please do that. A couple of housekeeping items. One, we had my first call with you was this morning. It was probably 10 minutes?
Yeah, and I was putting a car seat in while you were talking to me.
And it was one of the best first impressions that I've had in a long time. So I just want to say thank you for being you off the bat. Two, wanted to make sure you have coffee or something for this conversation.
I have Makuna, of course, being a...
Perfect. Of course. We're going to get to that. And then lastly, who was the man that used to interview people and start by asking, what's your favorite swear word? You know who
I
I'm talking
can't
about?
fucking remember. I have no idea.
Okay, perfect. All right, so is that the one?
I have no idea. I can't remember.
Oh,
Bernard Pivot. There you
really?
go. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I thought we would start off by telling the audience that we both want to know exactly who's in the audience. So if you want to put your role or your name or what you want to get out of it, this is the most casual, hopefully, session that you'll hear today.
But hopefully the most entertaining, maybe, but also informative. Entertainment, as one of my creative directors used to call it. So it's kind of like educational and entertaining, therefore respecting the viewer's time.
Well, and we're going to get to empathy because that was a big topic of conversation earlier. So I was doing my research on you, and one of the things that really stood out was that you're in love. Happily married, so I highly recommend his Twitter feed. And also there was a recent press release, let me see my notes here, that identified you as an industry vet. You've won 1 million awards in my mind, from Cannes to the Clios, the One Show, London Advertising Awards, etc. And it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you.
Thank you, Stacey. You should be my hype person all the time. I like it. Maybe we'll just do every meeting like this.
I need one of me too. One other thing that stood out to me is that you took a career break, I saw, and I thought that was so cool to have that on your LinkedIn profile, because I think we all in advertising and media and technology work our tail off. So what led you to do that, and did you get the most out of it? I think you're on mute.
Stacey and I both have young kids, so having spent the last 12 years in one of the publicist agencies and the previous 10 years in WPP and IPG agencies, I just wanted to spend some time reconnecting with my kids, or trying to actually be a better dad and atoning for my sins of absences. Obviously, working from home has allowed our children to realize that daddy and mommy can always be bothered. But there's real time. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to cook, ride bikes, go to the farmer's market, stuff like that. I think I managed to do everything once. and pretty much nothing in between, because I've still been advising Makuna and some other startups in the background as well. So it never really stopped. It was more of a good PR, good social media.
I don't believe that. I think it was both.
It's probably both.
But speaking of Makuna, I said that right?
Yes,
Makuna.
absolutely.
Tell us about the brand. I'm excited to hear it from you.
So Makuna has been around for like 3 or 4 years. It started off, we have a great founder story. Ricky was a professional. He grew up, he's a 5th generation Ecuadorian. His family is a 5 generations of farmers. They come from Ecuador. He grew up in that family. He became a professional tennis player. So he was on the ATP tour. And what happened is he contracted a pretty nasty disease that basically kind of like laid him low for like 2 years. And we have all of this on the website. My CEO is way better at telling the story. This is probably the first time I've actually tried to tell this story in public. So it's always good. I've basically been in my role for 5 weeks, but I've been part of Makuna on an advisory basis for the last year, helping redefine the brand, putting a new brand vision, trying to take all the great narrative that we have, the great story, and then kind of like visualize that and kind of move it forward as we accelerate. So Ricky basically tried a lot of Western techniques. He was living in America at that point in time, tried a lot of different ways, like Western kind of medicine, lots of doctors. They basically didn't know what was wrong with him. So he goes home, and one of the family friends basically says to him, hey, you should try some more of more of the indigenous food. So he basically ended up being given what's called chocho. And it's actually part of the lupin family. And the lupin family is not a bean, because this is what we're always up against. It's a small plant that grows in what we call the chocho zone, or what Ricky calls the chocho zone, which is between 11 and 14,000 feet of elevation in the Andes Mountains. So it's a small lupin, and when it grows there, when it's actually harvested and it's still wet, it is 54 grams per 100 grams of plant protein. So it's one of the world's most incredible plant proteins that no one knows about. And because it grows at such a high elevation, and it's also a cover crop, and it actually is harvested in the winter, so there's no pesticides, it's one of the cleanest plant proteins you've ever heard of. And if I didn't have, and it only grows in there's lupins grow everywhere. They actually grow in the Santa Monica Mountains near me. I'm based in Los Angeles, so I see them all the time. They tend to be really beautiful purple little flowers. But the yields that we get in America, and one of our operations guys was actually posting some photos. He was walking with his little daughter recently, and they saw a field of lupins, and he actually showed like how small the lupins, the seed pods are when they're grown in America at altitude, but when they actually are grown in the Andes, they actually produce a real yield that's really large. And then through a proprietary process, we actually debitter them, we mill them, we grind it into a powder, and then that powder becomes like our protein powder. And then that protein powder is also a flour substitute, so it can actually be used in multiple things. So it's kind of like it's a natural superfood. It has 9 out of 9 amino acids. It's 100% lectin free. It is 0 net carbs in the pure version. It is literally an athlete's dream. So you asked me a small question, and I just went off on everything. I have all the rest of the RTBs memorized. I have the tattoo. We could go into many different things.
RTB, I hear RTB, and I think real-time bidding. Wait a second. So originally,
reasons to believe. So
okay.
That's remember, I don't come from. So it's interesting. Stacey comes from the trade desk. I come from more of a kind of a storytelling, more of a kind of like a creative point of view, connecting with we both connect with consumers, but we do it on both sides of the aisle.
For sure. So, but what was his symptom that made him need treatment?
He was just kind of like lethargic. I can't remember the exact, I don't want to, this is where it gets really weird, because I'm in California and I've been so trained, I don't want to actually say what his thing was, because it was actually his private medical. I don't want to actually, I want to be 100% precise. It's somewhere on my website. I don't have that memorized.
Fair enough. So, okay. So in North America, what does distribution look like these days?
So we first started off working with a very local kind of retailer. If anyone knows, one of the best kind of like high-end kind of like health food markets is Erewhon. I'm not sure if many people know like the Halle Berry smoothie. We actually started the smoothies with them. We're both in the tonic bar, so with the plant protein of choice at Erewhon. But then we also have great velocity on sales. Can't go into too much details, but we're pretty awesome and we love Erewhon. That's how we launched. And then we also have a DTC model, and then we've been picking up really awesome velocity with clinical nutritionists and other kind of things as well. So hopefully that answers everything. And then we have some other things I can't talk about that I'm really super excited about and really tired, but we'll get there eventually.
So, I mean, I have so many questions, and I keep wanting to make sure that I check myself and make sure they're catered to the audience, because I want to ask you, what made you transition from advisor to full-time employee, and how has that journey been? And I'll stop there.
All right, let's do that. I'm a massive believer. So if I didn't have this background on, you could see a road bike. I'm training for a charity bike ride with my bike friends called the Fireflies, which is a media and advertising group centered, and we raise money for City of Hope. We do, they actually ride into the Cannes Advertising Media Festival every year. That's been going on for the last 21 years. We also do a California ride. So I'm training for that ride. So I've always been very interested in endurance and athletic nutrition. So if anyone has ever done an Ironman, I've never done it because I'm a terrible swimmer. I like kind of sick like rock. Maybe I can do my Sean Connery impression. The name like the Rock. Of course, you need to think you can swim. The nothing. I basically cannot swim that well. But if I was, I would actually do the Ironman. So they say that nutrition for endurance athletes is the fourth sport, and really understanding how you can power your body is something that I've been doing. I tend to ride like 5,000 to 7,000 miles a year on my bike.
Wow.
Do like crazy big rides. 110 miles was my biggest last year from LA to Ojai and back in 100-degree weather. So pushing myself and my friends, and we do this for anybody, and we train them up, and we show that the human body is really incredible if you have the right training, but you also have to have the right nutrition. So this is something I'm really passionate about, is like how the food that fuels you, that allows you to perform, is something really, really important to me. Whether it's actually organic, regenerative organic, any kind of like whole foods. When I grew up with my parents, we always had an allotment. So my parents, because they didn't have a lot of money, they were always growing their own food. So I've always been deeply connected to that kind of like that food culture. But I have in the past, I have worked for Unilever and Nestle and some of the big conglomerates.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because let's assume you didn't say any brand names. There are brands that don't have the same natural ingredients that you're talking about. And as someone, I see you, and obviously this is our second time meeting, but I see you as someone who is like completely authentic and has to be tied to a mission or a purpose.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Anyone who wants to sell, and that's all that really marketers are, with salespeople, you have to believe in what you're selling. And yes, there's a certain amount of like, you can trick yourself, like, because you can't always pretend to know everything. But you have to find the truth. When I was working at McCann Erickson, they have probably one of the best catchphrases in all of advertising, which is like truth well told. It actually goes back to like 1905, where they were actually doing a lot of like fruit advertising for all of the orchards around San Francisco, like old school Silicon Valley, before it was Silicon Valley, the orange groves and stuff like that. So it's finding the truth in the product and connecting authentically with an audience is so important to me. And I think it's so important to any marketer who's trying to do stuff. Find the truth, find a way to tell it in a unique and authoritative manner.
As a early stage company, how do you do that without the crazy budgets for research, et cetera?
I think it's even more important as you're smaller, is to find authentic ways to connect. So I love the fact that you picked up on, hopefully I'm always authentic, and I know that you can never always be truly authentic, because I can't always bring my authentic self to work, because I try to, but I also sometimes have to filter because I am English, and English and California sensibilities don't always mix. I think you, as a smaller company, you have to make the moments matter. So MMM is something my CEO, Tara, used to be my client twice. So I'm so lucky to work under one of the best marketers that I've ever had in my career, to become like a true mentor as I transition from much more of a creative focus, but then kind of like branch out and try and understand a little bit more of the marketing kind of landscape. So I've always worked in integrated agencies with media, with data scientists, with like great 3D people, great developers, all those kind of things over the last 20 or so years. Being able to actually have those what if questions is really important. Being able to and answer those kind of questions together, but being able to expand that that tool set, but then actually put it in that beautiful constraint of like a smaller budget, smaller footprint, less brand awareness. It's an interesting new challenge to me. So I come back to that earlier question that you just asked, Stacey, like why come on board now? For me, it's about growth, personal growth, but it's also a challenge. If you have a product that you actually believe in, and if I can just somehow make a dent and get people to accept plant protein as an alternative fuel source for themselves or a different food, that might actually help kind of the global warming stuff. So, Stacey, we haven't talked about this.
Yeah, I think you're so lucky because you're so tied to a purpose that you believe in. It's like oozing out of you. And I don't think you could or would have correct me if I'm wrong. It's not like, we don't go way back, but like, if I know you, you would not have gone to an organization where it did not bleed out of you with. Yeah,
there's some of that. I think it's easier. It's easier to be mission aligned. So I come back to my cycling group. So on the 10-year anniversary in 2017, I was nominated within the group to actually lead it that year. And there was like 55 versus 10-year anniversary. And after that, after leading it and basically doing a full-time job in my part-time pre-kids, or I had just one little baby at that point in time, the eldest, there was, I felt like I was in a hangover for a whole year. And I was working for another brand I believed in, Lexus and like Toyota and Lexus do the right thing. They give away their patents. And again, here you can hear me like trying to figure out a way to pass out both my personal beliefs and then my business beliefs. And they're still a big conglomerate, and the people who work there really believe in what they're doing. And if you get to that scale, there's always going to be compromises in a corporate vision and a corporate strategy. But you can also, if you know enough about Toyota, they license their hybrid technology to everybody, including Tesla. There's a thing called Thumbs, which is a digital model for crash testing that they basically open sourced all that data to the car industry. They helped on airbag deployment. So they, as a company, they actually do think about things in a larger mission, because I think that's more important. And also, having worked on Lexus, having worked with some amazing qual and quant people, and all of the data that said affluent consumers and premium consumers are looking for more purpose-driven brands, I also had that quantitative data to allow me to say, I knew that this was going to be a success, and I could put my shoulder to the wheel or to the back of this vehicle and push it along, and therefore help make the world a better place. I know we just heard that from AMBev and stuff like that, but in a smaller brand, you probably have a little bit more of a chance to kind of make a bigger impact. And having spent the last, 20 years of my career being gun to hire, I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to truly align my personal purpose with my corporate and career purpose.
Yeah, that's what everyone hopes for.
Yeah,
so
I'm very lucky. And I didn't move. I spent 12 years in my last agency, and I didn't move for anything. I moved for the right opportunity.
That's really cool. So did you see it coming when you went from advisor to full-time employee?
Well, we've been talking for a while.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. So speaking of affluent consumers, that is your target audience, right? Like this is a premium brand.
Yes,
correct?
it is. Well, it starts off as premium. So it starts off on a part of our corporate strategy, which I'll just touch on in broad brushstrokes, because I think anyone who's smart enough will notice that we started off in California. We are moving into New York. We're moving into geographical cities that actually have that population. We call them, our audience is called HVPs, high velocity performers. So people who are very mindful of what they eat and how they eat it, and might be a little bit more educated onto whole foods, definitely regenerative agriculture, moving from much more of a kind of a trendier thing and kind of branching out. It's easier to go trendy out than to go mass trendy or fashionable. So it's kind of like, it's that classic kind of Aikido approach. Take the opportunity that you have and use that as part of your corporate strategy. I did tell you my CEO was probably one of the best marketeers I've ever worked for in the 25 years. It's all of her architecture. She's brilliant. It's just a masterful approach and a great go-to-market strategy.
That's amazing. So I wanted to ask you, so what is the strategy? But so your role spans across all of marketing, innovation, media, creative, etc., right?
Yeah, and we're doing a lot of it in-house. So we're trying to build up an in-house group that obviously can work on DTC. It makes a lot of sense to have the ability. Again, you'll see echoes of my career in what we're doing. It's easier to ask those what-if questions if you have the opportunity to get those answers from great people who are virtually sitting next to you. We're a fully remote organization. We're pretty small, very small actually. We're punching above our weight. It's kind of crazy when you know how small we are to the impact we're making within the new brand place, and how we're going up against in the doors that we're open, how we're going up against and beating established brands. That's also a great call to arm. Like the LFG, let's fucking go, is a everyday the Slack. We're always doing that. Sean Connery is my new favorite. Ignore his personal things. Just enjoy Sean and the James Bond kind of like spirit.
I told you, you're in the best part, like the ride up when you're building, and in my opinion, every win, whether it's big or small, the whole organization parties together because it's never been done before.
It's fun.
It's so
much fun. It is so much fun. And I have been advising a Web3 startup that was doing on the intersection between entertainment and technology. And that was really fun as well, but in a different way. But this feels so much more purposeful. And it's so much more mission aligned to that. Ultimately, how do I want to leave the world for my kids? I was a late dad, like 40, stuff like that. It's very top of mind. It makes kind of sense. Sorry, Stacey, I will ramble. You know this already.
Oh, it's so good. I have so many questions for you.
Let's go.
Okay, what was the most garbage advice you've ever been given that you want to repeat it because no one should ever follow it, and it's something that you hear all the time?
I have no idea. I think that is a ridiculously great question, by the way. I'm going to definitely ask that one.
No, I stole it actually from Brené
That's good.
Brown.
Genius Steals. That's a great one, by the way. Genius Steals is a great piece of advice, but how do you know if it's genius? So that would be my... I'm all about using other people's ideas and refreshing them. We talked about like that idea of like creative, that kind of like both familiar and yet different. That idea of like, how do you create cultural dissidence, or like that kind of that disco. There's a thing I learned a long time in art college, which was about color theory. Like if you know complementary colors in orange and blue, different side of the color wheel, red and green, purple and yellow. But if you actually mix down those colors into something, it creates discord. So I thought I had a book near me. Nick Hornby also talked about like, why do songs stick in your mind? And he was saying that there's a reason that songs stick in your mind, or those little kind of like earworm. I think Americans call it earworms. Those kind of that like kind of when you get like a little riff or there's a chorus that sticks in your mind.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
An earworm, I think it's called, like that kind of like that little lick or that kind of you keep on repeating it. It's because your brain is trying to figure out it's very familiar to something, but it's different. So it keeps on repeating in your brain again and again. And there's a reason why things like Got Milk, which was done by Goodby Silverstein and Partners, is so iconic, because that catchphrase is obviously, it takes the rules of grammar, but then it changes it, but then becomes something that's a little bit different. So you asked about, I've gone completely off topic, but I find it always, I'll always do this.
I haven't even noticed. I'm totally engaged. Keep going.
But this idea of like finding little things that are both familiar and yet different, and then using that to your advantage. So you also asked me about how do you actually punch above your weight? Part of it's actually getting closer to the consumer and trying to understand how they think and how they might act. So,
and you are the consumer, so lucky for you, because...
But I'm not allowed to talk about that. As a marketer, I have to think about science. As a creative, I have to kind of mind my own emotions and my own experiences. But then also marry it with like the data and the insights I get from my planners team. My wife is also a strategy director, so she used to be an account person. We met at Ogilvy in New York, but she also works for a large gaming company called Riot Games, and then advises some startups on the side, which they're all about. That whole idea of creating like using data to create insights is really fascinating to me, which is one of the reasons why I always loved working with people like on the trade desks, like, hey, can we query the DSP and the DMP? Because I want to know, are there any insights within that data which allows us to actually pick out something, some kernel that we can then create some discord and some like creative ideas, really attach, really create what's both familiar and unique, and then kind of work off of that. So as a growing brand, as a tiny brand punching above its weight right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to disrupt the category and grow beyond the category, which is great because we have that product, which also has the perfect profile of both being one of the best, the best. I can't ever say that in advertising because it's a claim, of course, but it's the best plant protein I've ever used. It's even better than probably like a whey isolate without any of that junk. It doesn't have those fillers. It doesn't have anything. It's just one pure ingredient, but then it creates that ability to kind of perform on a high level, which is what we're trying to do with the brand as well. Take our natural ability and then punch above our weight. You can tell.
Well, speaking of data, passion point for me is sales data. And let me just contextualize this for a second without giving a crisp commercial. The sales data is, to me, this data set that's sitting at CPG organization that's not being used in marketing, unless it's a smaller brand. It feels like the bigger the organization, the less likely that POS, inventory level data, et cetera, is being utilized to say, okay, let's only target consumers where there's actually inventory available. I'm curious if you use that data set at all, and if not, maybe because it's more D2C. Just curious where you guys stand on that.
Right now, we have a very clear picture of all inventory levels within our larger retailers. As we expand, it's going to depend on their technical maturity, as you know. I'm in your world, by the way, and I'm skating on very thin ice. I barely know this, by the way. But as you know, like different levels of technology maturity, and I think we can talk about that across all organizations. They're always going to be in different levels of maturity. The ability for us to, as a small team, we're very connected to each other. I just came from an S&OP meeting, so I can tell you exactly how much is on Amazon right now. I can tell you exactly how much is in our warehouses, how much is in our self-fulfillment. The small team is great because we have that thing. As we scale, that becomes a little bit more difficult, I think.
Do you want to talk to your wife? I bet you that's your wife.
No, it's not. It's actually, it's actually, I had my friend, one of my cycling friends invited us into a honey company. We have a certain percentage of Malibu honey, which is a health food money.
I was actually thinking, when you were talking, I was thinking about partnerships. How do partnerships with other brands play a role with the growth of your company?
Oh, extremely important. Like, yeah, again, being a purpose-driven brand, a B Corporation, and definitely a women-led, Latinx founded, we are in that sweet spot of how anybody wants to work with us. I'm definitely open to that. So the larger brands who have something, having done, by the way, this is by someone who's also made a Sriracha car. So I once made a Sriracha themed Lexus IS with literally the world's smallest automotive budget that beat out Nissan and their Rogue One Star Wars massive budget at the LA Auto Show. Yeah. Actually, no, we didn't beat them, but we were very parity. But the Toyota guys were actually launching one of their major models that year, and they put literally millions of dollars behind. And I remember getting an email from our Lexus PR people going, "You have no idea how happy this makes me because we completely beat them." Because we literally, one of my account people who I absolutely adore, Joel Dons, shout out to him, he's not going to be on here, but he literally doorstepped. He never know. He doorstepped with another person, Trina. They actually went out to Arcadia to where they actually make Sriracha, and they basically found David Tran, got inside the factory and actually pitched him, and he was like, "Absolutely, I give away my brand partnership all the time because it makes sense for my brand." So that's kind of it's a very powerful lesson in my mind, is like the finding authentic brand partnerships are actually going to be important. As a brand marketer, knowing when to say no is equally as important as when to say yes. I want to make sure I actually answered your question because, yeah, again, as you know, I can meander. Part of the journey is the fun.
I'm thinking about what you're saying because it could be tempting to take a big partnership that might be sexy or well known, but if it's not authentic, then what's the point? You're sacrificing everything you've been working towards.
Absolutely. And my two friends, Chochi 1 and Chochi 2, they would not talk to me. So like I always need to keep these llamas kind of very much kind of in, like, one's going do it, the other one's going no, don't do it. So I think part of it is actually just making sure we're doing it for the right reasons. We're always looking to scale, punch above our weight, so it makes sense to look for great brand partnerships that are slightly larger. There's so many different ways to think about and assess those brand partnerships, whether it's they're treating them as a media platform and looking at them from a kind of a reach and frequency. Obviously, that one is great. Then there's the storytelling aspect. There's that kind of fit and finish. And then there's going to be like how does it impact on the audience, and does it make the audience think about you in a different way, and what is the outcome? And that comes down to tone. And I think my experience of working as a creative, and that there's a strategy side to it, but then there's the executional side, and those two things have to be very much aligned. And you have to keep in mind that strategy as you work through the work and how it actually manifests in the real world and how it manifests in those long scrolling like things. And for a long time in my career, we've always talked about, the last 5 years, we always talked about like the thumb stopping moments. How do you get people? How can you immediately connect with someone and go, I want to know more about that? That's kind of like PR thinking, that how do you intercept someone while they're trying to do something else, which is probably, I'm sure there's people from Instagram and TikTok and that's what they do for a living, but you can also do that with ideas. So the strength and power of ideas is so fucking important to me. It's so important to
threading the needle to not give them a poor user experience, because we were talking earlier about how even a banner ad should be authentic and you should be empathetic to, if I'm reading the news, I don't want something that's distracting me. So I go, wait, what was I reading? So it's so obvious that empathy is a core pillar of who you are and the work that you do. How do you bring that to packaging, messaging? Like packaging.
Yeah, I think, well, funny enough, we just did, I had these down and I'm glad I did. I'm going to try and keep them really low. We have 3 new like packaging things. We actually have a 10 serve right here that we redesigned. We made sure that we put the image, the images that we actually have on these packagings have a story. And there's a little thing on our blog post, which actually talks about where they were from, when they were taken, what was the thinking behind that. trying to create narrative touch points for the consumer who wants to go deeper, but at the same time being respectful for them when they're in the aisle. So we had I will show you kind of even the packaging evolution that we've done. So the single serve, and we had like a little bit, this is me being a little bit, or this is me and the creative team going, hey, just 5 ingredients here. But then we realized as we were talking to the retailers that the new packaging,
one ingredient.
It just says just 1 ingredient. So it's way bigger and bolder, which is what our research and talking to the buyers and the retailers, they were like, oh my God, you should totally make that larger. So we've kept that. We've also got the circle motif, which represents the regenerative agriculture, which is obviously that circular idea of like truly being good for the planet, and that kind of wholesome circle has become like a really important part of our brand and visual narrative. I like it when you can actually layer ideas from a communication point, and actually everything should have a purpose. And this is what excites me so greatly, is like, as I've taken this role in house, the ability to layer stories and narrative. It's not important that you have to get it the first that first moment that you actually interact with a brand, but as you go deeper, we actually reward the customer for taking that moment to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's kind of like embedded long form storytelling just in packaging.
Oh, how do you?
And again, I could be completely like making this shit up.
It's working though. I'm ready to buy it. Like, what do you mean reward them?
I reward them for a journey. So reward them on the journey as they take a journey with the brand and they discover it and they understand all the different levels of information that's behind there. Be respectful when you're at shelf. Try and communicate that, hey, I'm a great, wholesome, single source, 1 ingredient product that maybe comes from somewhere different, that has great shelf presence, that is in a recyclable or made of recyclable ingredients and stuff like that. But then surprise and delight them. I hadn't shown you this, and yet again, this will be on the bottom. We did like a little kind of cool it's inspired by Andean kind of stuff, and just even showing that to buyers, like you pick it off the shelf and you go, oh, that's cool. Originally, we had it like wrap up on the bottom, so there was just a little bit. And then everyone was like, well, it looks like you've misprinted it, and that might actually not work for you. And I'm like, well, let's recalibrate. Let's put it all the way into the gusset. And yet again, this is like that kind of like layers of storytelling. Does that make sense, Stacey? It
does. And it's making me wonder, this might be a hard question or one you don't like, but in this journey, it's only been 5 weeks, but you've been a part of it a lot longer.
Yeah.
Is there anything any misstep you took that you really regret? Like what is a mistake that you've made that you've learned from that you wouldn't have done again?
I think anything is about not having enough information. So being mindful, anyone who's listened to this, if you can make more mindful choices, and I think you can never know what you don't know. And I think I would rather have asked better questions. But yet again, until you actually know the right questions to ask, sometimes you can't unlock the right information. So there's that idiom, which is hindsight is a beautiful vision, but one that's very hard to pull off. So
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's a great idiom. I wish I'd known the right questions to ask. And I still wish that. And I still wish I could get a crystal ball and know exactly the right information. Having done very expensive TV ads, anyone who's ever sat in a video village and you watch take after take, and you know you're only going to ever use one of those takes, but that clock is ticking and you're spending all that production money, and you go, I wish I knew the exact 3 seconds of this clip we were going to use in the editing bay. And you don't know that. So sometimes you just have to go with what you don't know, make the best decisions, especially as a small company. Using your intuition and experience to kind of make those decisions, move, fail fast, learn, pick up, repeat. Don't make those same mistakes again.
Okay, I won't.
No, I'm going to make the mistakes. By the way, being mistakes is human. Making mistakes is authentic. So it's like,
Okay, one of the last questions, and by the way, I didn't even look at my questions. So the ones I sent you, I didn't ask you any of them hardly.
I have them over here on my other monitor. You're doing a great job, Stacey, by the way. I love this.
Thank you. I could talk to you for a very long time.
Let's
I
do
didn't
it.
get into like your investment story. I mean, there's so many. You're very.
That's about me. Let's talk about the brand that I'm in love with.
Oh, okay. How do you measure your success for the next year as a marketer there? It's hard to attribute everyone's a team and it's like everyone's pulling their weight, but how at the
ultimately I will come down to I was very lucky to have started off my advertising career in David Ogilvy, a sales guy, someone who'd had like 9 different jobs before he ended up in marketing. And his whole thing was like, you sell or else. So ultimately it's going to come down to brand growth, retail velocity, units shipped, and how much people love or unlove the brand. So standard metrics, branded, unaided, aided awareness, looking for proxies, all those kind of things, not spending too much money, not burning our investors' money, treating the money correctly, all the things that we should do as a senior executive in a small company. And then I would just say, like, fans, I think there's a massive opportunity for fandom. That ability for people to discover, to take co-ownership of brands is something that's really interesting.
That is really interesting.
And then if we extend that out and think about how we touch the earth lighter is another thing that I think is actually a measurement of the success of the brand. Like, how can we be a truly ethical brand? How can we do the right thing for the consumer?
Okay, final question, because I know we're at time. What would you tell your former self who was debating going to a smaller company, a purpose-driven company, but there's a risk because, of course, an early stage company is scarier to go to than a big company that you know you can predict the future of more.
Do it.
Do it.
Right. As my 4-year-old says, do it. Usually as my son is about to jump off of something, she's like, just do it.
Thank you for your time, and I hope we can stay friends. I think you're
totally. We're super connected. Stacey, I want to hear all about Crisp. You never got a chance. I know that's part of the stuff I'm very interested in, as you were alluding. How do I get better data, get better insights? I always say I'd love to go from I think to I know. That is really important to me.
Let's do it. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you both so much. And I love I think to I know. That's really great. You guys have been an absolute blast. I'm glad I didn't have to have my hand on the beeper button because y'all kept going and I love it.
Oh, I can swear for days. I've actually been very low today.
Mother.
Stacey, thank you. Carrie, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to me dribble on for a while. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks to everyone.
Nice cat.
Oh, thank you. Yes, he likes to join when the camera's on. That's the end of our day, actually. We're leaving you on a awkward note with the cat. But like they just said, mistakes happen. Thanks for tuning in. A big shout out to all our speakers, our sponsors, and to everyone in our audience. Don't forget to check out our Brand Innovators website to learn about our upcoming events, like what we have going on in New York coming up. And don't forget to go back to the chat. Evie dropped the link. Tomorrow is the last day to get your nominations in for our Women in Marketing Awards. So